A lot of people treat Auckland like a stopover city, a place you land and leave as soon as possible in order to get to the real New Zealand. But we realize that by rushing out, most travelers are missing one of the most vibrant cities in the North Island. We didn't want to just pass through. We wanted to understand why this city is the way it is.
From a black sand beach so magnetic it didn't feel real, to a haka experience so intense it stopped us in our tracks. We want to share what Auckland actually felt like, what we learned, what we'd do differently, and what we wished we would have stayed longer to see.
We'll share exactly what 9 days here cost us at the end. If you're planning a New Zealand trip, this is what you need to know before you land. Welcome to Auckland. I'm Judy.
And I'm Kevin. Welcome back to Finding Gina Marie, where we share our lives as full-time travelers and the connections we make along the way. Auckland sits near the top of New Zealand's North Island, balanced between two harbors, one facing the Pacific and the other the Tasman Sea.
We've been wanting to get to New Zealand since 2019.
But you know, it's so far down and it's so far away that there's always costs involved and there's time involved, and we just could never figure out how we're going to do it.
We also knew it would be one of the more expensive countries that we stayed in. So we tried to divide our time between the North Island and South Island. We knew we weren't going to cover it all, but we ended up giving Auckland a quarter of our time in New Zealand.
So 9 days, 36 days in all. It was a really nice time to spend in New Zealand. Honestly, I could have spent longer, but again, it costs a lot.
But now that we've gotten a taste, I feel like it's a lot easier to return and spend more time and explore. We didn't know this before we came, but Auckland is home to almost a third of New Zealand, about 1.5 million people in a country of 5 million.
But what fascinated us most is the entire city sits on a volcanic field. 50 volcanoes.
Actually, I think even a little bit more, maybe 53.
Okay, we're rounding down this time. But that means that every hill you see is an ancient crater. And yet it's also this lush, evergreen place with no snakes, hardly any spiders, and no predators. In fact, before people arrived, the only mammals here were none. Just reptiles and birds. And that's why so many New Zealand birds can't fly. They just didn't need to.
Until humans and their animals showed up, and then everything changed. Even if you don't like museums, we think the Auckland Museum is worth seeing. It's where we learned about this, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We arrived at night from Tasmania, and I just didn't know what I expected in Auckland. It was much more of a party atmosphere with like a very loose vibe and a lot of energy, very vibrant and pulsing, I would say.
We were located on Prince's Wharf, which is right near a big section of town where there's a lot of restaurants and activities, and where the cruise ships dock. So everyone coming off the cruise ships is going to gather there, and that's why that part of town gets a little busy and has a bit of a party atmosphere. If you put enough cruise people around, you're going to get some people drinking and enjoying food.
I would kind of say that all of the cruise ships was a bit of a buzzkill because they did bring crowds. But at the same time, it's the water, and there's an energy that comes with the water that actually also, I think, is positive.
Now, our apartment building was right on the pier. So literally on the other side of our building is where they parked one of the cruise ships. They parked multiple ones, but the big ones seem to be parked right next to us. When they unloaded, they shut down our whole parking lot, and you certainly knew when certain cruise ships were in there, like the Disney ones. Their announcements were very unique and very Disney-esque. So sometimes during the day, we felt like we were on the cruise ship.
I think one of the things that we didn't expect was that there would be as much rain as maybe we encountered. We were there from December 9th to the 18th, and there were a few rainy days.
Now, our apartment was nice because it had a balcony that was actually usable. It didn't face the water, but it was still so pleasant to be able to sit outside. There was enough space, and it just felt like, wow, we can actually slide these doors open and relax at a place. I don't think we sat and relaxed in any of our apartments as much as we did here.
And one of the reasons that I'm actually glad we had 9 days was that we didn't feel like we had to necessarily rush. So we could sit out on the balcony and just feel the sun and enjoy it. I think if you were rushing, there would be no way that you could have those moments. We walked around the city quite a lot, but I really was very happy with the location of our accommodations.
Yes, and it was near to a Christmas tree, so that was pretty too.
Oh yeah, that's true. There was a Christmas market. I wouldn't be so impressed with that, but the major square there was quite nice.
If you spend any time in Auckland or anywhere on the North Island, we'd love to hear about it. Tell us your experience in the comments below. We are big museum fans. Not everybody is, but we think that Auckland has an amazing museum and it's really a good place to visit and understand the culture of this area of New Zealand.
One of my primary objectives during our time in New Zealand was to learn about the Māori culture.
Wasn't there a problem with some places being closed?
Well, there were a couple of things. The first, I wanted to do a walking tour, but it turned out that during COVID, that group had shut down, so we couldn't use that. But also, there was a walking tour that we could have maybe done by ourselves. It was like a cultural walk, but we could never find the path. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing was paying for a special exhibit that happened to be at the Auckland Museum. It was called Māori Cultural Highlights.
They're very specific. This was going to be a cultural experience that was very personal and very intimate for them, and they did not want us filming it.
Next week, we'll be bringing you with us to Rotorua, and we also had a Māori experience there, but it was much different, in part because I think that what we experienced in Auckland was much more traditional. There was no clapping. They told us that clapping breaks the connection between the performers and the audience, and instead you pat your heart or shake your hands as a way of reflecting the energy back to them. One of the other things was that you see people like open their eyes really large, and we didn't know if that was an aggressive stance or what, but sometimes it was, again, in response to emotion.
They're in the moment and they're reacting in the moment, and this is not anger, this is not joy, this is not anything. It's just whatever is coming through them in the moment. And I thought that was all very fascinating, and I could feel it as we're sitting there in this auditorium, the energy hitting me, and I thought it was a fantastic experience.
At the end of the performance, we were able to ask questions, and I was one-on-one with one of the Māori people, and I asked them, what is one takeaway that we could share with our viewers? And she basically said that the Māori are individual people, even though they're part of one culture. And what we experience in Auckland will be different than what happens in Rotorua. And you shouldn't judge an entire culture by your experiences with any one individual, because they are individuals. And I thought that was actually really good advice.
Yeah, it seems like the same expression you would say for any country. Don't say that just one city of Ireland represents all of Ireland, or any place in the world. You know, everybody's unique, and so this cultural experience is going to be different. And yeah, we did experience that. We'll talk more about that in future videos.
I could have spent a lot more time in this museum than we did, but two parts we thought were especially interesting. The first was the natural history part of it, where we learned about the evolution of the various animals and reptiles that lived here before humans.
Yeah, and the evolution of the island itself, the structures, how it was built. They had a lot of displays showing how the volcanoes were building the various islands and how they're not done. Everything is still very active.
We're not really big sports fans, but one of the things that I was really excited to know more about was the All Blacks rugby team. They are famous for all of their leadership and the haka that they do.
It had a lot of information about how the All Blacks deal with teamwork and how impressive it is if you get called up to the All Blacks from one of the regional teams. And it's much more than sports, which is the part that I really felt impressed by. They clean up their own locker rooms. They do all this stuff that you would never think that they would make a sports team do. And then there's a whole extra part that we got to do, which was the interactive parts.
I really wasn't sure that I'd be interested in some of the interactive stuff, but I promise you that I got into it.
She's very competitive.
I am very competitive.
And we were doing some of the sports activities, like the agility movements and pitching the ball and throwing the ball. Let me tell you, tossing a rugby ball the proper way is really hard. She was doing it better than me.
Well, I was just aiming for accuracy, but overall we had a great time. Now, we would have loved to go to Eden Stadium to be part of the history there, but this really was still a nice experience.
We got to walk into this special room floor-to-ceiling video screens, and an amazing sound system.
Because these screens were so big, it felt like we were going toe-to-toe to the All Blacks team. And we were experiencing what it feels like to be the opposing side of an All Blacks haka. It was absolutely incredible. I mean, it was kind of shake you in your boots, and you could actually feel the vibrations.
Oh yeah, all through our bones, yes.
And there was also the women's Silver Ferns doing their version of their haka as well.
They're both very emotional too. I felt really moved by both of them.
Just finished doing the All Blacks experience. And originally I wasn't sure if it would be well worth it. But it was. Absolutely it was. And people had said, oh, kids would enjoy it. But we had a blast.
Yeah, the mixed reviews are kind of silly. Yes, there are things that you're playing games and doing things like that, but I found the speeches, I found the information about the team and the history incredibly inspiring. And yeah, the games are fun. I mean, a little competitive spirit here, so it was worthwhile.
So the museum and the All Blacks experience were great for the rainy days that we had, but really when we came to New Zealand for was to be with nature.
We took a wild side tour at Mount Eden and found out just how much everything was a volcano from this tour. We got to walk on an ancient volcano just 10 minutes from the center of the city. It's the quickest way to learn how Auckland is built as far as geography. We got to stare over the city, and our guide pointed out every single crater in the city. It looked like there was no spot that wasn't a crater.
It was cool because we could look out, and I think she basically said, as far as you can see, this is still Auckland. And I thought that was pretty powerful. We could see a long distance because fortunately we had a beautiful clear day.
And because you're on Mount Eden, which isn't that tall, it's not that hard to walk up, you can see both sides of the water, the ocean and Tasman Sea.
We wouldn't consider ourselves beach people, but we've been to plenty of beaches over the course of our lives. And I would say that Piha was one of the most outstanding beaches we've ever seen.
It's most unusual, at least. I've never been to a beach where I had to worry about dropping one of our magnets from our camera gear.
You can actually see as though you were using one of those kids' toys.
Oh, yeah.
The
magnetic forces.
Yes, they're standing up. Each of these.
If you drop your phone, now the phones have magnets in them.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's got to be a mess.
It's so fine as well. It gets all under your fingernails and your shoes and everything.
And that's because the sand itself was magnetized, which was...
Well, it's so full of iron, actually.
Yes. There were rocks that you could walk out onto, but they seemed like they were still built from sand, but they were solid. Yeah. Remember that?
Oh yeah, all the bumps and everything on them look like they're just going to be easy to kick off. No, it's just hard. Everything's rock hard.
A lot of these are very connected, so it looks like they might be moving on you, but they don't.
Yeah.
Look at that. That one right there. I thought for sure that one's going to move, but all these are just really tightly connected.
Well, because it's all part of this volcanic system that has just kind of frozen them in place. This is just, these don't move.
It's like a punk. Like, hey, we're punking you. You grab some of the stones. No, I can't.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm just happy when I can balance standing on a flat surface.
Our surfing is standing on sand while waves hit us.
I got kudos for being out here. Kevin is not.
I'm just waiting for you to go too far.
I mean, I am going to be a little wet, but this is a fast drying skirt. So glad we booked this tour. This has really been so much fun so far.
Yeah, this is an amazing beach.
Woo.
So our tour led us down to these trails and to Karakare Falls. But on the way, we also grabbed some of these leaves off a tree. They were used as medicine, right? They're for numbing.
Yes.
And you chewed on one. Did you feel numb?
I did feel a little numb. And you're chewing it, or are you putting it between your...
Just try chewing on it for a bit.
Yeah, because you're going to get the juices out of it.
Oh, it does have a taste.
Nice. I've had the tea before.
It's a good experiment, but I think I'm going to go for the meat pie.
Yeah. I could see how maybe if you, yeah.
You can also see they've got fruit on them. This one's just starting to ripen. They've become this golden orange colour. And the birds like to eat those, but the seeds of the fruit have that same sort of numbing effect. So if you are going to eat the fruit or I've made jelly from it before, you have to strain the seeds out.
And the falls were great. They were down this trail, and then you just look up and you see these falls. And people were trying to get their best shot by the falls, their Instagram moment. So they were swimming over to the falls and standing there. The water looked a little chilly, though.
Yeah, it did look very chilly. We were happy to celebrate them without feeling like we had to do the same.
Exactly.
Now, there's no amenities in Karakari Falls. So before we stopped there, we were at a local shop and picked up some meat ham pies that we could eat there kind of as a picnic lunch, which was really special.
There's no trash cans there. There's nothing around that you can do anything with. So whatever you take in, you have to pack out and make sure you keep this place pristine.
Which I really appreciated. I feel like throughout New Zealand, we felt that their respect for the environment was really commendable.
Yeah, really impressive. We ended our tour at a winery that's been in the family for many generations. And it was a quick tasting, but we certainly enjoyed getting a little sip of New Zealand wine and tempting us to find other wineries, which we unfortunately didn't have time for.
Yeah, it was interesting. And I think one of the coolest things is that, let's say, the generation of great-grandchildren got to name a rosé wine, and they got ownership of that, which, how fun. Like, that's kind of like you grow up with a pony.
A pony you can drink. Better pony.
Similar to our experience in Australia, there is a huge Asian influence here. And we got to get some really delicious food. In fact, we had some Japanese food that inspired us to add Japan to our 2027 travel plans. But we also had some South Korean food as well.
We also bumped into one of the most unique ice cream experiences. Chiapo is famous for these enormous chocolate creations. And they would put the ice cream in them. And it looked like a lot of work just to eat ice cream. But
yeah, it was kind of like a hard shell. It was like hard shell chocolate.
Yeah, but not just a simple shell, like creations.
Yes.
Really complex.
One of the reasons that we went there is because there's this thing called Hokey Pokey, and it's honeycomb ice cream, vanilla ice cream with honeycomb. So we wanted to check that out.
It was a little overly sweet for me, but it was a great experience.
Maybe the reason it was overly sweet is because you had yours on a brownie or something.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I stand by that decision.
We also have to give a shout out to some of our viewers who recommended we go to 269 Parnell. It's like this co-op of various types of foods. And it was our 42nd wedding anniversary.
So here's to 42 more years. Cheers. Salute.
Salute. So we walked there and had some Italian food. There was another place that you could get wine, which we did, and a cappuccino afterwards.
Very unique because it's just a courtyard. Like you're walking in, you wouldn't expect to see anything there. It's not like a true mall food court.
We took the tram to get back, but the tram system worked out great.
Yeah.
And one nice thing about the trams was that you could just do tap to pay. So there was no complicated system. It wasn't the cheapest mode of transportation. I think it cost us $5.11 for the ride, which wasn't that far, but it was worth it.
Didn't help that we got on the wrong side of the track at one point and had to like rush around to the other side.
That's true. And when we say that Auckland deserves more time, we mean it. A couple of things we didn't do was to visit the Bay of Islands, which was maybe a 3-hour drive, and we just knew that that wasn't going to work. We also chose not to fit Rotorua, which there's a lot of tours you can take back and forth as day trips, but we ended up giving Rotorua 4 days of its own, so we wouldn't be stealing from Auckland, and I think that was a really good decision. We also missed Waiheke Island.
The rain days, as Judy said, which made us say, we're not doing the ferry over there. And then every day we walked by, because we were right at the harbor, so we could see the ferries. There seemed like there were crowds backed up all the time. Of course, you got cruise ships. We just figured these ferries are going to be so full. Later, some people we bumped into said, oh, no, No, they're fine. You actually can get on the ferries. We just didn't know better. And so if you want to go there, it's probably not that hard to do. Ignore the long lines. They move quickly and you'll have space on the ferries.
And one of the reasons that you would want to go there is because there's a whole bunch of different wineries there. And I think that New Zealand wine is really delicious and probably worth going to a few different wineries and sampling while you're there.
I do miss that experience.
And while 9 days is not slow travel, we also think that it is slower travel than I think most people when they're visiting Auckland. And we think that if you slow down a little bit, you can have more interesting experiences than when you're just rushing around. I think we totally would have skipped the All Blacks experience, and I think we would have really missed that if we were rushing.
Yeah, with the reviews being kind of iffy, it's easy to throw those things away, but don't do it. And just a quick note, New Zealand requires visitors from many countries, including the US, to have an NZETA before you arrive. You can request it easily through the official NZETA mobile app or the Immigration New Zealand website. Just make sure you do it at least a few days before you head to the airport.
I would say give yourself a couple of weeks if you can. It really was almost an instant turnaround, but I would never want to not get into a country you want to visit because you didn't do the paperwork
Especially
properly.
if you came a long way to get to New Zealand.
So what did it cost us for 9 days in Auckland? Travel cost us $618 to get from Hobart, Tasmania, or $309 per person. Accommodations were $914 or $102 per day. Getting around the city cost $47. Dining and groceries were a total of $739 or $41 per person per day. Our tours and experiences cost us a total of $412. And the total cost is $2,999, which includes haircuts and personal care items. Minus the cost of transportation to travel from Tasmania, we spent $2,381, which breaks down to $265 per day and $133 per person per day. So is this what people think of when they think of New Zealand? I'm not sure. I mean, it's definitely a city which is not so much about land and nature, which I think is what most people do think of when they're thinking about New Zealand.
I think it's such a special occasion to visit a place like this, and the expense maybe a little higher than some other cities, but you're all the way down on the other side of the world, and I think that makes up for it, and it's definitely a unique place to go.
If you're starting your New Zealand journey here, we encourage you to take your time, slow down a little bit, give Auckland its due. I think it gave us an experience about New Zealand that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, there's plenty of New Zealand to go and visit the outdoors. I think you can spend a little time in and around Auckland and get the feel of what makes it unique.
We definitely plan to be back to New Zealand. And we also would like to know what our Aucklanders think about our reflections. Do they line up with what your experiences are? We'd love to hear about that.
If you like this video, we think you'll enjoy watching our month in Melbourne and how it feels different than Sydney.
Thank you so much for coming along with us to Auckland. If you haven't already subscribed, we'd love for you to do that. Our next stop in New Zealand is Rotorua, and you're not going to want to miss it.
Remember to
Wander more
worry less.
and bring a passport.
Until next time.
Until next time.